interesting. It is the aspect of how that happens. Does this thing happen instantaneously, or it is a process? Is intimacy just a one-stop event, or is it a process? And what needs to happen that the couple can arrive at this oneness? And like you rightly said, Doc, I use the words interchangeably. Intimacy. So if we say intimacy and oneness, we are really saying the same thing.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
I think I was reading Dr. Brian Craig, writing out of Australia, and he uses the word oneness. But I was sitting in the class with Dr. Kiss, and he used the word intimacy, the same thing. Right, actually. So oneness, intimacy is the same thing we're talking about. How do we arrive at this oneness? How do you arrive at this total oneness, this total intimacy when there are two separate persons coming together to form an alliance? They're coming from different backgrounds, different experiences. They have had different family upbringing. They have their own likes, their dislikes. They have the life that they were living together. They had their circle of friends. They had their job. They had the extracurricular activities. They had all of these things. So two different persons coming together. How, therefore, do they arrive at this oneness is the challenge.
Indeed. And, if I may just go to Cloud and Towson, because they made a very important point in their book. Oneness is the word of romance. Everybody wants this. We think of a couple who has just fallen in love, so to speak. And you feel the atmosphere. You can see the glow on their faces. And sometimes people say things like, this is the dream of my life. This is the angel from heaven. And you hear these fanciful terms. There is that euphoria. Sometimes you say that not even breeze could pass between them, how close they are.
Yeah, yes.
And sometimes we watch movies and they fall in love and they live happily ever after. And that's not the real truth. And that's the point I'm getting at here. That's not the real truth, because in a number of instances, yes, that initial euphoria is there. People are head over heels in love with one another. But moving from after a while, let me slow down. After a while, that euphoria wears off.
Yes.
And
that is what Guernsey refers to, whatever happened after the wedding pictures. You see all of this smiles and romance and people hugging up and kissing up, and so whatever happens after the wedding pictures. So it is when that wedding is over, then the real life marriage begins.
That's right.
There is where the work after the wedding is over, real life marriage begins. And there you have to confront the reality as to how do you grow, because that's Cloud and Thompson. How do you grow in this oneness? What is involved? And as you rightly alluded to the fact that what we see in Mills and Booms and on picture screen is far from the reality, right? And so we can just see that and think that, okay, this is just a euphoria thing. It just happened like that. But no, it doesn't happen like that. For you to arrive at this oneness, there are some things that you must do. There's something that you must do. And, I am a stickler. I'm an information grabber. I'm an information thief, if I will say that. My brother-in-law, who is a clinical person, he was making a presentation, and I like this concept that he developed. He talked about the 4 stages, and he linked the oneness or the intimacy to these 4 stages, and make the same point that yes, when this thing just started, it looks all exciting and all of the aura and the felicity feelings and all of these things, But when you come and live in the same space, an adjustment has to be made, and a child comes into the union, and then another one, and you have to deal with the children and your job and all of these kind of things, what happens? So that first stage, which is the merging stage, yes, this oneness is there. As you said, people are together. They cannot, nothing, some breeze can pass between them. At the melting stage, the same thing happens. All right. At the molding stage, the same thing happens. But when you come to the making hard and beyond there, some difficulties could develop. And Cloud and Thompson did allude to that. Cloud and Thompson did allude to that. And Thompson did allude to that. That it comes to the point where sometimes the couple want to know, did they make a mistake? Should they stay together? What is wrong with us now? We were so close, head over heels in love when we started, but now what's happening here now?
I think the problem is, for many couples, unfortunately, is that they accept as a reality what they see on television. Most people getting into marriage assume that that euphoria is going to last forever. They go off in the honeymoon. So sadly, some people never make it past the honeymoon. So the concept of the growth that we're going to be talking about for the next few weeks is really very significant. And what we want our listeners to understand, because there may be some individuals who are recently married and may themselves be thinking, I really thought I was in love with this person. I thought I had an angel from heaven, and now I really want to get out of this relationship. And so for those who may be thinking like this, we want to challenge you to stop and give attention to what we're going to be talking about, because moving from the falling in love, quote unquote, the euphoria, the butterflies in the stomach, moving from there to having a genuine, meaningful relationship requires growth. It requires hard work. It is not automatic. People talk about love at first sight. You don't just see somebody, love them, and that chemistry remains constant without you doing some things, some really very important things. And that's what we want to talk about today.
Yes, and that is the work part.
Indeed.
The blessings of oneness is tremendous, but the blessing doesn't come without the work. There are many people who want the blessings of marriage, like the intimacy, the oneness, but they're not prepared to do the work of marriage. And there are some things that have to be involved there, like you rightly said. And lest this point elude me. When we talk about oneness, we're not just talking about one area of marriage, because the Bible mentions the one flesh, and the one fleshness is really talking about the physical, sexual intimacy. The two become one. In the sexual, a lot of times people think that, well, is that just alone? No. There are several areas, and so I am quoting Brian Craig.
I was just going to make reference to Brian Craig. So
he speaks about spiritual oneness. He speaks about emotional oneness. He speaks about physical oneness. He speaks about sexual oneness. He speaks about economical oneness. He speaks about intellectual oneness. He speaks about recreational oneness. And when you listen to that, you can realize that this oneness is a process. This is not something that can happen in an instant, right?
If I may go back to Brian Craig a minute, he talks about the move towards intimacy. And you're using the word process, which is pretty much the same thing. I often say to people, listen, when you are married, it's a coming together of several different areas. It's not just about the physical oneness, the sexual intercourse, but it is a journey towards an ideology, so to speak, a philosophy of life, a way of life, a path that you're going to take together. So that Brian Craig even mentioned things like the whole concept, not just spiritual intimacy, as you mentioned several areas there, but even aesthetic intimacy. Where you share the joys of art and science and those kinds of things together. So we're talking about real work.
Yes, and it's a growth experience. It's not something that you can arrive at, and it's a goal to be reached. Intimacy is not a goal. The oneness is not a goal to be reached. Every stage of the marriage, family, and marriage life cycle requires work to be done on the oneness of the individual, of the couple. So if you are in the stage of marriage where, you're now beginning to have children and you have to pay attention to them, and then you're probably going back to school, you're probably building your home, you're doing several things. Some people put down the work of maintaining the oneness and the intimacy while they are distracted, while they are doing all of these things. And then they hope to come back to it at some point. And my experience has taught me, as I deal with couples, that's a major issue for a number of couples, of marriages. So,
Well, let me
the
put
point
it
we are
this way,
making.
Pastor Adams. I really like your points. I mean, I just want to plug something in there, because you're making that very important point that if you put aside the growth process of the marriage to give attention to other things and then come back to it later on, you find some difficulties. So I just want to
Yes.
see here, illustration. If a young man at age 21 stops growing because he wants to concentrate on his academic journey, or he wants to concentrate on sports or something to that effect, if you stop growing, what is going to happen to you? You are going to die.
Yes.
And similarly, I think that's the point in the marriage. If you neglect the growth of the relationship to come back to it after a year or two, when you come back, you're going to have to do a lot of work to resurrect something that is dead.
Yeah, the relationship would have drifted, and drifted for a very, very long way. So we have a lot of drifted marriages because people put aside this work of oneness, intimacy, to deal with something. We're saying, no, you have to deal with the oneness and the work of the oneness, the intimacy at the same time. So you have to put that into your plan, that you cannot neglect this growth, right? How do we grow? In fact, I was reading two other authors. I think they were family life instructors, not the Youngbergs. I think there's another, Flowers, and they were making this very same point, as to how crucial this aspect is, that you cannot, and then it takes about 7 to 9 years to arrive at some point of synergy. And that's quite some time, right? About 7 to 9 years to arrive at some point of synergy, and then you still have quite a lot of work to do beyond that, as you seek to maintain and grow in this area of oneness. You see.
Yeah, definitely. And, so that really has to do with life cycles. We did a series on life cycles some time ago. Now, I want to take us to a very important element here. But before that, let me just share a little concept I came across here in Cloud and Towson. Because a lot of individuals assume that feeling of euphoria, that euphoric feeling, is going to be maintained without real efforts. They quickly become discouraged along the way, and they ask questions like, what went wrong? They think they can do better with someone else. There are lots of individuals who, when they run into this meltdown, their answer to the dilemma is to quit, to find somebody else. But the interesting thing, the thing that we want you to understand is this: a new relationship will require the same growing pains.
Yes.
Not just for the couple, but for the individuals likewise. So we are going to be talking, and I'm noticing that our time is almost up already, but we're going to be talking for today and for the weeks ahead about the idea.
Time's almost up. Yeah, as you're saying, get into another one. You still have to be dealing with the same growth experience, the same growing pains, and you will have some additional things to do, because it's not just into another relationship. You've probably got to heal from the first one that you're exiting, and that's another job by itself. That's work by itself. In fact, you will come to the next relationship with more issues, and that's why the research is showing that second relationships, the separation rate is higher.
Well, let me say this as well, because I think another problem that people make is that when they end that relationship because it's not going so well, they don't take time to heal before they enter a new relationship. So that if your relationship has failed, and unfortunately there are many circumstances that may cause relationships to fail, we generally say, do not rush into another relationship until you get to that state of wholeness. Because if you do, the baggage that you're making reference to Pastor Adams, you're going to take to that new relationship. And chances are it is not even going to last as long as the first one.
Right. That usually happens, right? You have to come back to a state of emotional wellness and equilibrium before you invest in another relationship. And that's a very crucial point, right? Why do you get out? I think that a lot of couples, if they search themselves, I think Claude Thompson is referring to that. They have the capacity to do this, and it is just the growth experience. And Dr. John Gottman said something very crucial. And what does this have to do with this? Because I'm trying to allude, even though we're not into it yet, I'm trying to show what are some of the prerequisites that must exist if this oneness must be experienced and maintained. You see, you have to keep the love cup full and overflowing.
Pastor, before you go there, I mean, I like to say on Marriage Encounter, somebody shared that I started by talking about Let's Talk, but we are on Marriage Encounter. But I like to say that on Marriage Encounter, we take our time. And we really don't want our listeners to miss important points that we're making. You made a very important point there just now that I kind of want to go back to. It may take the rest of the time we have today, perhaps, I don't know. But the idea of why do they leave? I really want us to plug in on that a little bit. There are couples who are having serious issues, and a lot of times the solution the only solution they think about is quitting. Now, the point you made is that most times couples have the potential within themselves to resolve their issues, to put in the hard work, and to overcome those challenges, which will lead to a very meaningful relationship.
Yes.
But people don't look in that direction. They quickly look in a direction of just walking out, because walking out seems easier.
The easier way.
The easier path is not always the better path. I remember attending a seminar. Well, it wasn't even a seminar. I was in a meeting, and an old gentleman, had come to that region. I was in Trinidad. They were having a lecture series in his honor. He was 96, I think. They invited him to an executive committee meeting we were having, just to say a word of greeting. And I remember Dr. Tobias asking this gentleman, if there is one thing you want to say to the executive committee of the Caribbean Union, what would it be? And that old gentleman with years of experience, he turned to the committee and he said, take the long path. Take the long path. The long path may appear to be more difficult. It may appear to be more intensive in terms of work, but oftentimes it is the best path. And that's what I really want to echo to those who may be having marital issues today. Put in the hard work. Seek to work out the challenges. It is a better way than just giving up and quitting.
Right. And that's so crucial. And there's where the intervention comes in. Because sometimes if you and I will tell folk that don't be afraid to get the help. If you think that you would need help to stay and to work through the issue, then albeit it will pay off with much great dividends in the long run. So that's so very crucial, right?
Indeed. So now, Pastor, we have 3 minutes, so
3 minutes.
we can stick with this issue before us. You were getting into an area there about the elements, what it takes.
Yes, I was talking about the elements, some factors, communication, resolving conflicts amicably and in a timely manner, and love, right? The communication, the conflicts, how do you resolve the conflicts, and those issues, and love. Those three are so, and they did a whole longitudinal study. And this is the three that they came with. They said, well, all of this time that we have spent studying, these are the factors that help the couple to grow in their oneness and stay in the relationship, right? The love, communication, and the ability to resolve their conflicts in an amicable and a timely manner.
We
I
have
want to
1 minute
master that
left, I'm
because
told.
and so I was going to say that yes, in addition to the love part, you also have to have the skills for this process to go on. And that is the key thing. I think when we come back for the next program, we probably will be talking to some of these skills here, what you will require to grow in this one. As I just alluded to, communication and conflict resolution. Those are skills that you will need.
Which is why it is so important that people listen to programs like these, because I can imagine some folks may be wondering, where do we get the skills from? And that's why we have programs like these, so that you can get the exposure. And we often on this program provide examples of where you can get resources to assist. But unfortunately, our time is up. We have to say goodbye for today. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to write to us. It's marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. The address again is marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. So until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.